Okay.
So minimum maximum provides the CPU utilization.
Yes.
So why only minimum 16?
Because there are some VLANs which are actually reserved, right? So some system reserved VLANs are there. Yeah. Now, the first thing that I would do after creating the VDCs is allocate the interface to the VDC. For that, as we see, the port groupings is very important to understand, so that we first make the topology and then allocate the interfaces to it, right? So I will not follow this topology. I'm doing random allocations, okay, just to show the port groupings. So if I in case go to say VDC VDC2 and allocate interface, then Ethernet say 3/1 only, and hit enter, and it'll ask you what does it tell you. Entire port group is not present in the command, right? Missing port groups will be included automatically. Moving ports will cause all the config associated in them in the source VDC to be removed. So every configuration would be removed from that interface. And are you sure you want to do that still? And I say yes. By default, it's yes. So now when I do that, it tells you already, right? Whatever ports are there missing in the port groups will also be allocated to that VDC. So if I do show VDC membership right now, I will see that not only 3/1 went, 3/3, 3/5, 3/7 also went along with it, right? But if you do the same for another interface, 5/, then it doesn't give you that warning message, right? It doesn't tell you missing ports because this doesn't have any port groupings. So only one port will be allocated to that VDC. So if you do now show VDC membership, I do have 5/1 only because it doesn't have any port grouping. So with 5/ you don't have to worry much. With 3/ you have to worry. It depends upon what modules, right? Because any modules can be put in any slots. So it was in slot 3 here. It may be in different slot for another racks. Okay.
So while allocating the interfaces, you are going to allocate 4 interfaces.
Yes.
All you have to see is the interface capabilities and then put it.
Now, another thing very important is under the VDC, VDC2, what are the other things that you can do? Is one of the things that you can do is allocate interface, right? That's what we did. Other things that you can do is allow. Now, why is this command there? You must have given this command, install. First of all, let me give this command, show feature set. What will this show you?
All the features.
Oh, there are some features which actually is not just one feature, it's set of features, right? Like for FCOE, Fabric Path, FEX, MPLS, these are feature sets. We have to enable several features all together. So they come under feature set. Now, whenever I have to install the feature set, because as you see, the state currently is what? Uninstalled, right? It has to be done in which VDC? Default VDC. Because if I give the same command on other VDCs, VDC2 is what VDC? Non-default. What do you see? It's not telling uninstall, it's rather telling disable. Okay, so we have to install it first on my default VDC. Say we wanted to do Fabric Path. So I'll give the command install feature set of what? Fabric Path. Say I wanted to do FEX. I'll give the command of install feature set FEX. Right? If you give the command show feature set services and Fabric Path, these are the along with Fabric Path that gets enabled. Unicast RIP, Dynamic Resource Allocation Protocol, ISIS, Fabric Path Protocol, and Layer 3 services. Right? 3 services are there in Fabric Path. If you check for FEX, VN Tag Manager and FEX service is running. It's a feature set. Now when you give show command show feature set, you see that as what? Installed. FEX is currently what? Installed. Okay. Fabric Path still it's showing uninstall. So let me give the command license. Let me give the command grace period and try it again. Install feature set of Fabric Path. Okay, it's installed. but it's just installed. Is it enabled? No. But when I install it, it automatically comes for all VDCs. Every VDC now is capable of doing fabric path. All the VDCs. If you do show run, you will see here the command of allow feature set fx, allow feature set fabric path. Did I give this command? It is not only in VDC1, it is there in VDC2, it is there in VDC3 and 4, all of them by default. What does allow command do? Allows that feature set to be available on other VDCs, okay, which may be a troubleshooting ticket in your labs. Why? If I give no in front of that, what will happen then? Not be allowed. So if I go to say VDC2 and give the command no allow question mark, what can you change? Feature set and say fabric path on VDC2. I give this command. Okay, so if I try to go to VDC2, how do I start fabric path in VDC2? I start with the command of feature set fabric path directly, right? But is it showing me? Fex is only shown. Fabric path is not shown. Whereas if you go to VDC3 and do the same command, you see both. So there may be a troubleshoot ticket where on the default VDC, for any VDC, if you have this, then that particular feature set is not allowed to be used in the that VDC where you have that command. So be careful with this first of all. Because we are in VDC2 first of all. No, we didn't move. We are in VDC2 configuration mode. If I do any configuration in VDC2 mode, that will only change for VDC2, right? If you do a configuration under the interface, it will change only that interface. So be careful with this, guys. This may be, so if I give now allow feature set fabric path in VDC2, what should happen then? It should come again, right? Which it comes. So allow will do that. So let us again go to VDC2, check other options, question mark. You understood allocate, right? You understood allow. What is boot order for? Changing the boot order. 1 to 4. By default it's 1. Lesser, they will boot first. No need of doing this. HA policy, I'll describe it later. Okay. Limit resource. What will this command do?
CPU.
Limit resource of what can we do? We can do limit resource of multicast version 4 route memory. It's not the number of routes, it's the route memory. Multicast version 6 route memory. Module type, monitor session, right? Port channels that are to be created. Version unicast version 4 route memory. Number of port channels we are allowed to create. Yes. Multicast, unicast version 6 route memory. Number of VLANs you are allowed to create. Number of VRFs you are allowed to create. All this can be limited. There is by default already there. You saw the values, right? 16, 4096 and all those things. So you can change those values if you want to affect what? Resource allocation, right? Because if I do limit resource, say for example, module type, and if you give a question mark, you have options of F1, F2, M1, M1 XL, M2 XL. You don't see option of F2E, right? Because F2 is supported only 6.2 and onwards. Okay, and SUB2E and SUB2 supports it. So say I gave F2 only, just for an example. What will this cause? This will cause all ports of unallowed types to be removed from this VDC. This will cause, so we had already allocated some interfaces to it, remember? Yeah. Right? So we had allocated 3/1, so along with it 1, 5, 7 went, right? And along with 5/1 also we had allocated previously, right? Which we can see, I think. This one we already had allocated. So what will happen to those ports? Because those ports doesn't belong to F2 module, right? So if I currently check, what is the command to check? How do we check?
VDC membership.
So VDC membership. What happened? went to VDC 0. Okay, and now if I go to this VDC 2 and try to allocate interface Ethernet 3/1, what will happen then? Entire port group is not present in the command, it will give you that error. I say, okay, I still want to do it, but it will give you error. This module type is not supported. Why? I have given that command, limit resource module type F2. So only F2 can be put in this VDC. If I try to put any other module, that will be stopped. So this may be another troubleshoot ticket, right? They may have given this command, because of that interfaces are not able to be allocated to that VDC, right? So be careful with this as well. So just remove that command, will allow it again.
So why didn't the rest of the interface go in VDC?
Rest of the interface were not allocated to it, right? Interface which were allocated to it goes to VDC 0. Now, if I again try to allocate, now it takes it, right? No problem. So be careful with this as well. Let us give question mark. So limit resource, you could do module type, you could do other things like your version 4 route memory or version 6 route memory, right? Yesterday you wrote a command. Do you remember that command to estimate the number of routes we can have? What was the command? Show routing for IPv4 or IPv6, because most of the times IPv4, right? Then memory for what? Estimate for the number of routes, right? So amount of routes we had, say we had some 1,000 routes we were expecting, right? And number of next hops we have. So say the next hops were only one, say. So for one next hop, it uses how many MB? 1 MB, right? If we had say 2 next hops, still uses 1 MB, right? Let us check with 16, that will use more, right? Because as the number of next hop increases, so the number of route increases, more memory. So you can estimate this, and based upon this you can do limit resource, because I can have more memory required on core layer, on aggregation layer lesser, right? Yesterday we saw that in the PPT as well. So we can go to VDC VDC2 and give the command limit resource mu4 route memory. And what is the maximum minimum, it will ask again. So I want to give at least minimum memory of how much. So let that be 300, because say this was a core layer VDC, right? And maximum also I want to give it 300. Minimum let it be 300 itself. Okay, so that it takes, what is 300 here in MB?
350 MB for
Yes. Okay, so say this was a core VDC. That's why I would give this command. Okay. Now you can also limit resource. What else? Number of VLANs you can create. Here also you will see the keyword of minimum. So minimum number of VLANs, because there are some system reserve VLANs as well. You see with FEX, actually they use some VLANs inside internally. With fabric path, they will use some VLAN concepts internally. Okay, there are system reserve VLANs. So minimum value, if you check, it starts with 16 itself. Yes. It starts with 16 as the minimum value. Okay. Now maximum value you can control. Say I wanted only 100 VLANs. Right? You can give that. You can also do it for even your VRFs minimum. So minimum VRF starts with 2, right? Maximum say 10 VRFs. You can do all these things. It's possible. So allocate will allocate interface. Allow will do that. What? Feature set. Boot will change your boot order. Limit resource can limit any resources you want to, right? Now others are commands available everywhere, right? No will negate that command. Now we have template and we have limit resource, HA policy, right? Now what is HA policy is high availability policy. This policy is generally used when we have two soups. Unfortunately, we don't have two soups. We just have one soup in the chassis, but HA policy is for how many soups? Two soups. right? So that if one soup fails, another soup is still there to still do the data plane forwarding. My data plane would not be affected even if control plane is affected. So if you give question mark here, it will ask you, what do you have? Do you have a dual soup? Do you have a single soup? So I'll give, say for example, virtually we had dual soups, right? Dual soup, what you can do, if bring down, restart, switch over. There are three options there. Okay. Now, if you want to check what is the default HA policy, you can check that by giving the command show VDC detail. Okay. So VDC detail will show you the default HA policy and default HA policy when there is a dual soup. This is a HA policy when there is a single soup. What is that? Reload. This is a policy when there is a dual soup. What is that? Switch over. Okay. For other VDCs, what is it? Restart, switch over. For default VDC, it's reload, switch over. Other VDC, it's restart, switch over. Okay. Now, what does this mean? Actually, so for your single soup module, when you do HA policies, which you can change by giving this command, right? HA policy for dual soup, switch over, single soup, restart. This is what command you can give to change the HA policies. But what does bring down mean? Because you have several options you saw, right? If you gave a question mark, you saw option under the VDC1 itself, you'll see HA policy, and for dual soup, you have three possible things you can do: bring down, restart, switch over, right? Now, what does bring down mean? This will put the VDC in which state? Fail state. To recover from the fail state, you must reload the VDC or the physical device, right? Because when we reload the default VDC, actually we are reloading the entire chassis itself, right? When we reload another VDC, we are only reloading that VDC, right? So what does reload tell? Reloads the supervisor module. What does restart tell? Deletes the VDC and recreates it using the startup configuration. So restart is best, right?
If you reload,
Reload will just reload without saving the configs.
that's just right.
Yes. Delete the restart will do what? Deletes the VDC and restarts it again using the startup config, whatever it has.
Whatever the default config.
Yes.
What was saved?
What was saved? But you have to have the startup config for that, right? For dual supervisor, so this is for single soup, right? Single soup can have three different: bring down, reload, restart. Dual soup can have one more policy: switch over, because now I can switch over to another soup, right? Which is the best. Now here also I have bring down, which is same. Here also I have restart, which is same. I don't have an option of reload here, but rather switch over. So I switch over from the active supervisor to a standby supervisor. The default HA policy for non-default VDC is what you can change. You cannot change the default HA policy for default VDC. Okay, the default HA policy for default VDC will always be reload for a single soup and switch over for dual soup. You cannot change this. What you can change is the HA policy of other non-default VDCs. For by default, what is the HA policy for other non-default VDC? It's restart for a single soup. It's switch over for dual soups. Okay, HA policy which is default for the default VDC is reload for single soup and switch over for dual soup. Okay, but whose policy can I change? Only the non-default. I cannot change HA policy for the default VDC. For that, we need to do something in a system app reset. Okay.
If the default is reload, right?
Default is reload for single soup.
If it's reload, the other pieces will get affected.
Yes, but we don't have an option if it's single soup, right? First of all, my question is, why did you have single soup? Because you cannot do switch over, right? So what I cannot do is I cannot do for your default VDC. So I'll go to which VDC? Say VDC2, and there I can change the HA policies for it. Just a second. So HA policy, you get the option of, so it depends what you have, right? Say we had single soup. So for single soup, what are the things we can do? Bring down, reload, restart. By default, what it is?
Reload.
Restart, right?
Restart is better.
By default, it was
Restart.
restart for non-default VDCs. Reload was for default VDC. Switchover is same for both. Okay. So which is better? Obviously, restart is better because it starts off by deleting the VDC and recreates it by using the startup config, right? And that is the default. So if you had a dual soup, what is the best to do? Switchover. Obviously, other options are bring down, restart. But this, leave it to its default, right? That's best actually. You may change it, but why change it? That's the best what they have done. Leave it to its default itself.
Default you cannot do reload. You have to do reload.
Which one?
Default you cannot go with restart because you cannot delete the VDC. That's why they did that.
We cannot delete the VDC. I didn't get you.
So they couldn't have had restart options with the default.
For the default VDC, yes.
All ideal.
Yep. So another thing that you can also do under the VDC is, let us go to VDC to question mark template, right? Now why would you require template? Because it may happen that several VDC has the same type of configuration, right? So instead of writing separately for all the VDCs, we'll create a template and copy paste the template on all the VDCs, right? So for creating the template, we have to go and give the command VDC and resource command question mark template. We create a template and a name. Say this was for my core layer. I was creating a template. Under the template, only one command that you can give is limit resource. You cannot allocate interface from the template. You can only limit resources from the template. So whatever command came under limit resource will be here inside the template. So limit resource, what you can do version 4 routes, VRFs, VLANs, module types, right? Say we give VLAN, number of VLAN minimum is 16, maximum is say 100. Number of VRFs, okay. Number of say port channels that you can create, minimum is say 10, maximum is say 50. This was my template, say, right? So instead of going to all the devices and writing the same command 3 times, you can go now to the VDC2 and call this template, right? By just giving the command template. Use what template? The name which we gave. That's it. So this particular VDC will take that configuration from the template, right? But in your running config, you will not see that. In VDC2, do I see template? Rather, I see the commands that I gave, right, inside the template. So in the running config, you'll not see the template, but you can apply the template in that particular way. Okay, this is how you do it. Any doubts, guys, in this commands that we have?
In order to go to the default limit resource.
No command
No.
in front of it. Yeah.
The allow command we are executing on the default VDC or non-default VDC.
Allow command only from the default VDC. Yes.
We cannot go to the individual VDC.
No. Because the command on another VDC, you don't have a command of VDC at all. V question mark. Do you have a command of VDC at all from non-default VDC? You cannot do any configuration of VDC from non-default VDC. So it has to be done in default VDC. So very importantly today, guys, we saw first of all VDC, right? So I have already written some notes on it. I'll send you this, okay? And we saw very importantly the concepts of VRFs in Nexus, how we use it, how we give different IP address to different management and use different consoles for it, so that makes my life easier and troubleshooting becomes easier, right? And so it's always good to finish your practicals the same day, because next day we'll do another practical, right? So if you like, it will grow If you do not practice one day, it will grow for you itself, and then you'll be at the end. You have to start from the beginning again because you have already forgotten that, right?
What to
So
start with?
yes, it's always good to practice on the same day. So it's like this practical hardly takes you half an hour, whatever we did today. To explain me takes more hours, right? For you to do yourself hardly takes half an hour. So take your time, book the lab, do this practicals. All right. It's always good to do that. And in I think in Cisco Gold Lab, it's not present though, VDCs. So you have to do it in real racks itself. So please do that. Okay. So tomorrow we'll continue with our discussion with routing first, and then we'll go to spanning tree and all those things. Okay. So for tomorrow, I expect you guys, you are already good in routing. That's what I expect. Because I'll not go through what is OSPF protocol, right? Long discussions of OSPF. It will take me 1 week to finish OSPF. So this is not a class of routing switching. We'll just know how to use it in Nexus. That's it. I'll not go through the concepts of OSPF, why that happens, this happens. Not OSPF class, right? It's just to know how to run it in Nexus. I already assume that you are good in these two protocols, OSPF and EIGRP, because these are the two protocols that is there in your syllabus. OSPF and EIGRP. You don't need BGP. You don't need DRIP. Okay, OSPF, EIGRP, and very importantly, redistribution also. Redistribution means in the case of Nexus, you have to use route maps. So this is another topic that I already assume you are good in. Route maps. Okay, that's why DC Cisco recommends what? 5 years of experience, right? Not just experience, you have learned everything in 5 years. Multicasting, OSPF, EIGRP, routing protocols, everything should be learned till 5 years, right? DC means 5 years. Or you learn it in 1 year. You have two options: either go to industry, get 5 years experience. You may be able to run OSPF, you may not be, because a company would not run both the protocols, EIGRP, OSPF, both. No, right? He'll run a single protocol, right? So the in the production network, you will have a knowledge of one protocol, but CCI exam demands the knowledge of everything. Okay, so that knowledge is required. That's why your CCNA and CCNP routing switching is the most important thing for any track you choose for. So if you ignore that, do not ignore it. Okay, CCNA and CCNP routing in switching is the most important thing, because if you do troubleshooting later, what do you need to do troubleshooting for? DC data center do you think? No, it's troubleshooting of routing switching itself at the end. Troubleshooting comes for routing switching itself, right? 99% of the troubleshooting in coming in production is routing switching troubleshooting. Very less troubleshooting comes security part or something like that. So your routing switching concept should be very, very clear. So please go through the basics of how OSPF works, how EIGRP works, and a little bit of route map, so that we can do this without any problems in the class.